Okay. And is anyone else new that's just joined? Anyway, I'll do a shout out when it comes to that. We've got a few people who want to update about campaigns tonight. We've also got Paul Powlesland, the barrister, who's here, and sort of nature campaigner, river campaigner, very well known. A media darling, can I say that, Paul? Who's going to be talking to us. And yeah, I just thought we'd tomorrow. I know you have to go at 6:30. So I was going to ask before we get to Paul, did you want to sort of just give a little, I know you wanted to sort of speak a bit about the Woodland Trust and what, and a particular campaign that's going on, is that correct?
Sure. Yeah, literally 2 minutes. It won't take very long. So I'm going to drop in the chat a link. For context, as Gio has said, I work for the Woodland Trust. So we are running a campaign called Living Legends, which is ongoing and essentially asks for the legal protection of our oldest and most special trees. That includes an 100,000 signature strong petition, which was submitted to Parliament last year. The next steps of that is this petition that I've just put in the chat. Specifically, it asks for a published list of legally protected heritage trees and revision of the Forestry Act to better protect ancient and veteran trees from felling. So we would love support for this petition. Specifically, we're trying to get to 10,000 signatures before the deadline of the 4th of February next year, because that legally requires the government to give us an official response. Currently, we're set at about 200, so we've got a while to go, but a while to get there. The special thing about this petition is that it's all legally framed and specifically worded to appeal to as wide an audience as possible, but also to get around the specifics of the government requirements. But also those requirements require a person to verify their signature. So whatever email you would use to sign with, please check that email after you've signed it to verify that you have indeed signed it and you do in fact want to sign it. Otherwise, your signature cannot be counted. So if you'd like more info on that petition and what it asks for, or the campaign more generally, I can give it to you. But in short, respecting everyone's time, if you would like to sign it, please do. We'd be very grateful of the support. And please verify your signature once you've done so. In terms of who you can ask, it's open to everyone who legally lives in the UK and has a right to vote, I believe. So please share widely. Please encourage people to sign and to verify once they've signed.
Great. Yeah, wonderful. Okay, so do spread it, sign yourselves and share it with people as well. And we're also as a group looking to start lobbying and sort of strategizing about how we might be able to sort of get involved at a higher level as well. And me and Ali were talking today about how we might still make talk at the all parliamentary party, the all parliamentary political
all parliamentary,
AFF
APPG, all party parliamentary group.
Yeah. So our wider aims are to kind of try and go a bit further. I'd like the next year anyway. But that sounds great. And we will. Was that everything you wanted to say about?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
That's everything.
Okay. Brilliant. Thanks, Tamara. Okay. So I'm now gonna introduce Paul Powlesland. He can introduce himself, but just briefly, as a barrister and founder of Lawyers for Nature, and his part of his mission is campaigning for the legal rights of nature, but he can tell you more about that stuff. He's also an amazing river campaigner, and he's really doing wonderful things with the River Lee. Is it the River Lee? Yeah,
the river roading.
Sorry. God, tonight I'm really sorry. I do apologize.
Wrong month, wrong river.
I know. Look, all I can say is it's the menopause for women here. You know what I'm talking about. I've had a long day. Anyway, with no further ado, I'm going to let Paul introduce himself, and he's going to be talking to us about some wonderful stuff related to sort of nature, trees, and rights, and all that kind of other stuff. So I'll pass you on now,
Um,
Paul.
just to say, how long do we have? I obviously want to have I want a lot of ideas from people and discussions. So how long
Yeah.
do we have in total for this little
Um,
segment, do you think? Just so I know how long to speak
you
for.
don't have any slides or anything you want to show. It's more like you're going to be talking.
Just
I guess like
talking.
10 minutes for like 5 to 10 minutes for, sorry, I'm just going to have,
Talking and then a discussion. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
great. Um, So, I want to talk to you all about rights of nature and what rights of trees could look like in the UK and how we might begin to make that a reality. Um, it's quite interesting for me going into rights of trees because uh, I do mainly work on rights of rivers at the moment in rights of nature. But actually, I got into this whole thing through trees. As many of you may know, I started becoming a sort of environmental activist and lawyer for nature as a result of the Sheffield tree dispute. And I've also been involved in quite a lot of on the street kind of tree disputes from Wellingborough down to Falmouth and many others as well. Um, and to me, it's quite interesting that although the rights of rivers movement is really growing, the rights of trees is pretty nascent. So if you went online now and Googled, you'd be able to find probably at least a dozen different rights of rivers declarations that you could adapt for your own river and start putting into action. But I don't think there's really any or not many out there for trees at the moment. And that is for a number of reasons, partially because there are probably more river activists out there, but also in some ways, the uh, rights of rivers are a little bit easier to frame than the rights of trees. And we can maybe go into that. I'd be interested in your feedback of how we could actually, what rights you think trees should have, and also how we deal with some of the more tricky aspects of trees. So, for instance, on rivers, we're often looking at the whole ecosystem because actually if you start narrowing it down to individual parts of it, you start getting weird trade-offs. Well, what if you were to chop that willow tree down to improve the habitat here, or all this kind of thing? So rivers, you're looking at the whole system, and it's much easier to conceptualize that in a rights of nature framework. It's much more difficult to do that for trees. Because, for instance, for street trees, we probably think that they have a right to life that should only be overridden in very specific circumstances. But for forests, actually, felling individual trees can very much enhance the health of the overall forest in certain circumstances. So there's that kind of tension there. There's also a slightly tricky point around the guardianship aspect of it. So broadly, and trying to explain this in the simplest way possible, rights of nature can usually be subdivided into two broad categories, which is the substantive rights and the procedural, what can be called guardianship or legal personhood, which is the enforcement of rights. So on the river Roding, I believe that the river should have the right to flow, the right not to be polluted, the right to restoration, the right to a healthy ecosystem. And I also believe it should have a guardian and legal standing who can bring legal cases in its name to uphold those rights. Trees, we can go into what the rights might be: the right to life, the right to a healthy ecosystem, the right not to be felled without proper cause. Who knows? There would also be this aspect of guardianship. The slight problem being that many trees are in private ownership on private land or in council ownership. They're not in some ways as and for like the public forest estate. Many of you might be saying, well, what is the point even of doing a rights framework? I personally think it is quite important. Obviously, in effect, everyone in this group is already taking a rights of nature approach to trees. You're doing incredible work, protecting, speaking. You're already being guardians and you're already enforcing the rights of trees. But I do think there's something quite politically and psychologically important about putting the work that you're doing into that deeper framework. And I've definitely felt on rivers, So again, on the roading, if there were already like rivers group, friends group that, you know, do litter picks, plant trees, but actually to declare yourself to be a river guardian and enforcing the rights of the river is far more powerful. And I found it to be a much deeper, richer process than just sort of doing the work, if that makes sense, having this framework to slot it within. There is also, I think, an issue that it's something that increasingly councils might sign on to. And the exciting thing I'm here to announce slightly is that we have a number of councils who have asked if they can, if Lawyers for Nature can help them to draft a rights of nature approach to trees. Obviously that has to be within the current legal framework. They can't change primary legislation, but within the current legal framework, how they can, as far as possible, take a rights of nature approach to their trees. What rights do we think their trees should have? Both trees that are in their area, which they have obviously some process over with TPOs and things like that, and also, more importantly, perhaps the trees that they actually own. And they specifically want to take a guardianship approach to those trees. So no longer just being the owner of them, but actually being the guardian, which is a massive change. And so far that hasn't been done by any council, and it could be an incredible thing if we can get that going as a model, because it could show other local authorities what's possible, and also then be something that everyone here can campaign for on local level. And it's not just some kind of pie in the sky, you know, Paul and Gio and Ali being a bit mad thing. It's like it's an actual thing that's happening in an actual council, and it works. But we need to frame what that looks like. So again, any ideas on what would it look like if within the current primary legal framework, how could a council come and be guardian of their trees and take that rights of nature approach? Finally, there's this issue of sort of enforcement. Now, the way that's been done so far on rivers, because we haven't got any changes to primary legislation for rivers, so they're often just declarations. And even the very famous declaration for the River Ouse, which is done by a council, still hasn't actually, to be honest, changed the fundamental legal position, because they can't change the law using bylaws. That's not how it works. So declarations have a purpose, and I think they'll be really important for trees as well. But there's an interesting thing of how you begin to make them a reality. And this is where sort of activism comes in, and maybe slotting some of the amazing work that's already going on into that framework. So, you know, where, as we heard last month, I forgot her name, the amazing person from Exmouth who was talking about saving her tree. What if that was through a rights of nature lens and putting it into that framework so that other people can really feel that they're a part of that too? And what if we all slot that into this framework? So that when I go and represent tree defenders, I'm actually, although I'm technically legally instructed by them, what if I say, actually, I believe in the rights of these trees? Thanks, Simon, Linda, in Exmouth. I believe in the rights of these trees, and I'm actually acting approach to my lawyering, and people can do it for their activism, and the group can do it in all the things we're drafting. Maybe even one day the Woodland Trust might do it for their, you know, for their activism for trees, taking this approach. Yeah, it is a bit vague at the moment, but that's because we're in very early days for this. But the rights of river, we are roughly now for trees where we were for rivers probably 4 or 5 years ago. The river stuff is taking off incredibly quickly and is really, really mushrooming at the moment. It's going crazy, and there's a lot of stuff happening. We're doing our first River Guardians conference for Lawyers for Nature in a couple of weeks with, like, we're completely booked out, like 40 River Guardians around the country coming to work out, using a rights of rivers approach, how they can be a guardian of a river. I feel like for trees, there is a lot of latent desire for this kind of thing, but at the moment it's a bit kind of scrappy, like saving a tree there and doing this here and, you know, firefighting. And I feel if we were able to come up with this kind of philosophy. Oh, someone on.
Oh, someone's got their security. Hang on. Yeah.
Thanks. yeah, if we were able to come up with this broader framework that we could put all our amazing work into and push it further, I think there's a real power in that. So yeah, I'm just coming to you all really as the people, many of you on the front lines of tree protection to work out, get some of your opinions about what rights of trees what you think about the concept. I'm going to get my laptop in a second and start writing down what you tell me, what you think some of the rights might be, and if anyone's interested in helping to draft up a sort of form declaration for rights of trees, and also ways of guardianship of trees, particularly, well, both for ordinary people and for local authorities, and maybe big charities like Woodland Trust and landowners, and then also how we can fit enforcement, this activism side, into the rights of trees framework. So yeah, hope that's
yeah, no,
good intro.
sounds really great. I had a couple of comments that sometimes, because I remember when you were speaking about, you spoke about trees going in forests sometimes can be beneficial to the rest of the canopy and the kind of understory, etc. I was thinking actually about the lack of understanding with street trees is that, say, if you've got a big avenue, there's roads near me that have lots of wonderful big tall plane trees, and they were planted by the Victorians, obviously, in London, and or earlier, some of them. Um, and a lack of understanding. Yeah, I was going to ask the same question actually, but a lack of understanding about the mycorrhiza, the networks underneath, like the root connections between trees, because these trees are thriving incredibly. And if we could find a kind of case study of a street where and look a bit on what's happening beneath the pavements, with these trees, because in some places where the trees are quite close together, there's obviously going to be relationships and communication going on between these trees, and they're really thriving. So it might be quite good as an educational thing to kind of draw people's attention to what's happening with the communication lines under the earth with trees, that kind of connectivity, that kind of flowing kind of communication system that's going on that we're learning more and more about through the fungal networks and the root systems. The other thing I was going to ask, like Ali, was which councils, I'm quite interested in which councils are expressing interest in this, because I think with all these things, it's really good to have a kind of, an A student in the class, to draw attention to a council doing really good practice and modeling really good stuff. So other councils might feel a bit like, oh, we're banging on about planting trees all the time, but this council's actually, wow, they've got a kind of tree a really progressive
So
rights of tree.
I can't.
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to tell you the actual council.
Oh, right. Certainly not going to be
But
Harrogate.
no. Well, but I can give you a hint that they are, as might not be surprised, they have a heavy green contingent to them on the council. But crucially, they are very open to ideas, and not just entirely practical things like esoteric ideas. Like I had an idea of, instead of just like random tree planting, creating a community forest where every citizen gets given a tree for a major life event. So if you register a birth, marriage, or death, or if you're given citizenship, you get given a tree, and that goes into the community forest, and you kind of have this forest that you grow together as a community, rather than just like whacking in saplings randomly, and people care for the tree that they've planted, that kind of thing. So they're open to quite like, a ceremony where the leader of the council kneels before one of the trees that the council owns and recognizes that they are the guardian, not the owner of that tree. They're open to some,
I would love
more
to see.
esoteric things, if I can put it
Yeah,
that way. So
I would love to
basically,
see. Yeah, the
right,
leader
is that
of our
right?
council
So
kneel before a tree. But yeah, no, I think it sounds like a great idea. I just, yeah, I'm going to bring in Tamara, then Anne, and I can't remember who was first. But anyway, Tamara, do you want to go first?
Yes, that sounds amazing. I will be following closely. I did have one question floating around work at the Woodland Trust is mention of the 1066 U in East Sussex, the Crowhurst U, which has just been given some kind of legal rights. I've looked online, I can't find anything to do with it, but it's kind of vaguely in the ether. Do you have any more info on this? I'm just curious.
no, I don't. I mean, there's been some rumblings to try and give sort of to try and give trees certain rights. There's also the tree that owns itself in America. We don't have that in the UK. Which actually could be something that a big institutional tree owner like the Woodland Trust could do as a kind of interesting thing, is like choose some of their greatest trees and give them self-ownership. Could be quite fascinating.
Yeah, sure.
As a way of doing this. And again, it's not in of itself, it's not going to make a massive practical difference because the Woodland Trust already looks after its trees well, but it's like it's pointing to other owners that this is a possibility and showing a different way of thinking, which I think is quite fascinating. And I don't think we should kind of ignore the public impact of this kind of thing.
Yeah, I think there's some really interesting, and you could link it in with cultural or new plans that are announced. So our council, lots of councils are supposed to have a nature recovery plan, and they're supposed to have a really good up-to-date local plan. And I know for Haringey, our council in London, a lot of their tree protections are supposedly going to be in this long, long awaited and delayed local plan. So, it may be something to link in with when they're about to announce, like, or they're drafting the local plans, or getting a council that's actually going to integrate this stuff into their kind of policy documents. Anne, do you want to come in here?
Sorry, I was clicking the wrong button. I'm hoping to talk about our woodland later, which has a TPO on it, and I've noticed you're doing a fantastic toolkit now, in which you mention TPOs and conservation areas. And I'm just wondering, I'm wanting to ask Paul, are you, as part of this campaign, going to try and get the TPO and conservation laws updated? Because basically, they can be got round. They don't necessarily protect trees. I live in a conservation area, and we lose trees all the time, and the officers say we can't protect them because we can't put it. Then they don't merit a TPO, so they have to let them do whatever. And our wood has a woodland TPO, which is quite unusual, and they're felling hundreds of trees. So I just wonder if you're going to campaign to get those laws updated, because it's pretty important, really, to increase the protection that they give trees.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Obviously, that's already ongoing, but I think this framework, the Rights of Nature framework, will really help with that. I've really noticed, again, with rivers, that by starting to do guardianship, it brings up case studies of how the current legal framework is inadequate. And actually, that is much more effective for a guardianship framework. Like if you were to say, like 5 years ago, I'd be like, oh yeah, there's sewage on the river. But I didn't really know where. But like by actively going out as a river guardian to try and find that sewage, I've now got like a lot more practical examples of why the current law isn't working, which can be used to campaign to change it. So for instance, at the moment, as far as I know, we don't have a case study bank of instances in which trees were rejected for TPOs and then subsequently felled and lost. We don't have that, and that would be really great. We also don't have, in general, a case bank of trees that have been randomly felled, which I think would really help. Like in my local area, I know of trees that were felled, and I'm using those now in applications for TPOs to show the necessity to apply for them. But actually, if we had a more national case bank that people could apply to, so for instance, if Tesco felled a tree in their car park near you, and you just put that online in a searchable database for all of us, that would then help us. That would help me on my site, because there's a Tesco near me, and I could say, well, actually, there is a risk to these trees because in so-and-so area, the Tesco felled trees without permission. But of course, I've got no idea about that at the moment. I only know what happens in my area. So I think we all need across the country to link up better and to find real life stories and case studies as to why the law currently isn't working. And I do think this Rights of Trees framework is it's not, we don't have to have that framework in order to do that, but I think it would help to be linked together as a nationwide network of tree guardians rather than just kind of random, the random lovely people we currently are.
Just one more comment then. If Tamara's still there, somebody's recommended we put a lot more of our trees in our woodland onto the ancient tree inventory, the Woodland Trust's ancient tree inventory. But he's also said that inventory doesn't give them protection. Again, whether the Woodland Trust can do something to make the trees that are on their inventory have greater protection, because obviously some of them are seriously important trees.
Yes.
And if that doesn't protect them, then I don't know how you do it, but it's just something I wanted to mention.
It's a good point. I've put a link in the chat to the ancient tree inventory, which you talk about. Ancient and veteran trees, once they're recognised as such, have limited protection offered within the National Planning Policy Framework, which means they have certain protections when considered in terms of development. So if it's a development threat specifically, they have certain protections and must be considered within applications essentially. But that is as far as the protection currently goes, and it is difficult to enforce unless you have proof that ancient and veteran status has been given. One of the best ways of doing that is to have it on the ancient tree inventory that I've just provided the link to. Yes, and the other link that I will provide in the chat before I have to inconveniently disappear is the link to our report a threat form, wherein our wonderful Woods Under Threat team that specialise in responding to threats to woodland, predominantly being development, will try and prioritise submitting objections on behalf of the Woodland Trust to planning applications that impact ancient and veteran trees in light of the protection they're given under the NPPF. So I will add a link to that specific reporter threat form, and all the information that would be required is listed in that form. So I hope that can help. But yes, I would certainly recommend log your trees on the ATI and use the reporter threat form where you can.
Okay, thanks. Christine, do you want to come in? Christine, are you all right? Are you on your phone?
I'm on a tablet, so it was a bit of a nightmare. So I had to work out how to. I had to download it and work out how to persuade it to log in. It took about 4 different ways of doing it. Anyway, I think trees. I'm thinking about street trees. It's not just street trees. They should have a right to investigation if they're damaged, because if somebody poisoned me, the police would investigate it. But when you poison a tree, some councils will try and find out, if at least make an attempt to find out who's done it, and some won't. So, and I think that's an issue, because you can murder a tree with impunity and nothing happens, and that's a different sort of protection. It's not the same.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to think whether that's a substantive right or actually a procedural thing, that, you know, if the law is broken, they should actually investigate. It was the same as rivers. You know, you can have all these rights, but actually if no one's there to investigate them, the law can just be broken. So that's quite an interesting one. Thank you.
And also think about, the branch, van damage. Like, I see so many, especially the young trees, but older trees as well, getting branches just slammed off by vans, and then they get really damaged, and then disease can get into the wound, and then the tree can go into decline. And I mean, it's just policing this sort of stuff would be so difficult. I just don't think they're, but I think it's I agree. I mean, I think trees are really they're exposed to so many threats on our streets all the time, and they're really unprotected street trees. I was just going to really, really, really quickly show you, like, until January 2024, we were doing this database, and unfortunately our local group got a bit burnt out. But so we were just kind of recording all the trees, that not only trees that were getting felled, but also really bad pollarding, so topping. So I don't know if you can see this very well, but so we were sort of really, and only in particular, everyone in Haringey, different people in different areas were kind of, but all the trees that were being really nice trees that were being felled or topped or damaged, or just, and then recording where the location, the reason, justification from the council, you know, so we could be doing this. I mean, everyone could be doing this in their local area. Sometimes I think having images is really powerful. And I remember Joe just caught someone doing that, this lovely, healthy, I don't know what kind of tree it was actually, but just keeping a record, a visual record. When you, Paul, you were talking about, you know, this was one of the lovely plane trees for a home insurance claim. So just keeping a sort of eye on trees that are felled in your area and the justification for. So I thought I'd just, you know, that's such a depressing sign in Haringey. I don't know if you can see that. That site, there's a lot of that sort of plastic tape around trees and they're just kind of left. That one looked a bit rotten, but there were two amazing oak trees in someone's garden. But yeah, just sort of, I think for a while I thought it was quite good to have a visual record rather than just having, but it's very hard to keep on top of because so many trees are going. Obviously, we now have the public duty to consult paid, like your council should be committed to that. So they have to publish the trees they're going to fell. And our council is not only publishing the insurance claim trees that they're going to fell, so we can keep an actual record of them, the quota, but also they're publishing, which I think is wrong, trees that are damaging pavements. So they gave themselves permission to fell trees that were damaging pavements, which I actually don't think. I wanted to speak to you about this, Christine. It's a bit of a kind of any other business point, but whether that's actually right. So they're also, so we're keeping an eye on some of the numbers of the reasons why some trees are being felled. At least now we can tally up what they say they're felling for insurance claims with what they're actually, because they're legally obliged to, you know, publish those decisions. Kit, do you want to come in?
Just before we go to any other speaker, just to say, just to get people in the right framework as well for this, or the right mindset for this rights thing. I think we spend so long as tree protectors just firefighting against the existing system and finding any which way to stop as much destruction as we can. But I think it's really nice to drop into a more imagination space and imagine what if we as tree protectors, you know, were in charge. If Geo was the Minister for Trees, you know, what would we ask for? What would we want the law to be? What rights would we want trees to have?
Yeah.
And that to drop into that space a little bit more, to really imagine in a more utopian way what we'd want. Sorry,
Well,
go ahead,
Ali's idea was great about a universal TPO on all trees. But Kit, come in, and then we'll go to Ali maybe.
Okay, so just really broadly, there's two things going on here. First of all is gathering the data, which is kind of a slightly depressing task, but that is something that we could, if there were like a nationwide thing where someone could just drop like this is happening to the tree on my street, that would really help. I don't know how to do that, but you know. And the second thing is when you mentioned the inappropriate pollarding and like also root pruning, I feel that these have been used as strategies to ultimately remove the trees quite a lot. So any discussion of the trees' rights, I think, needs to include like a right to natural growth habit as far as possible, and a right to proper pollarding. And then we kind of have to work out how to hold people to account, which seems to be the big problem a lot of the time. But as Paul's saying, maybe if we come up with the structure that we'd like to see and start working on case studies, maybe that would be the way forward. I'm just going to whack in the chat my thoughts on rights of trees, and I will.
The brilliant idea. I love that right to natural growth. What was it? Right to natural growth.
Right to a natural growth habit. So, you know, most trees can be forced into quite a lot of different shapes, but ultimately, if they can have a natural root zone that's uninterrupted and the canopy in the shape that they want to have it, they're going to be, you know, more resilient.
I think that's fantastic because a lot of trees are getting topped around my area. The crown's almost getting chopped off. I think the data is really interesting because in a way, you know, government just always works with numbers and figures, and it's really got very, you know, the data on the felling. We're never really going to know the many hundreds of thousands of trees that have been felled in the last, because councils aren't obliged to keep records. Some of them do. You can find out with FOIs. I can go back to 2008 with my council, but DEFRA isn't really keeping account of the figures, and no one really wants to keep accurate data on it because it would horrify everyone. And various journalists have done FOIs to all the councils in the previous 5, 6, 10 years, and there's different figures coming out, but it's going to be well into the millions. I mean, you know, we just can't substantiate it. That's quite difficult. But I like the idea of a kind of sort of national system, or almost like a mega Google sheet, you know, Google Drive, that people could sort of drop in their local data in, and we get kind of maybe an approximate idea, but that's about really keeping a track on, you know, and in London there's like 34 councils, so people in every borough would have to, yeah. So it's quite hard to get the really accurate figures. Sorry, who else would like to come in? Al?
Yeah, hiya. This is mad actually because I'm putting on multiple hats here. The reason I got in touch was for a very specific thing with my house, which I want to talk about. It's very pressing on my mind, so I'd like to come back to that. The other hat I put on, I actually, and Gio, we've talked before. Weirdly, I didn't realise. Because I was involved in the plane tree felling, which happened in southeast London. I don't know if you remember the one in Lewisham. So we were trying to save our tree for 2 years.
Yes.
That's a 130-year-old plane tree that the council were denying it was, and it was felled for an insurance claim. And that's actually why I'm here on the call. My other hat is that I've worked for a charity, Street Trees for Living, in Lewisham. So I plant trees, and I kind of keep a track on trees that are being removed at the same time as trees that I'm planting, or at least, you know, planting via the charity. So obviously trees is trees and the safeguarding of trees is very something that's I'm very passionate about. It's something I feel like, you know, having worked with the council, I do have some good inroads with my local councillors, but I find it very, I find a struggle of working with the wider council in terms of the tracking, and so I'm sort of hearing these stories, and very much it's affecting where I live as well. Recently, we've just had so many trees removed from insurance claims. I mean, a ridiculous amount of beautiful poplars that were, 60 foot high. They've been there for a long time, and people just removing them because they're worried about winds or, whatever it is. And there's no protection. They don't sit on, they sit in private land. So the felling of them is just, it's just willy-nilly, and it's just at a whim of insurance. So I'm here obviously with a very, very problematic issue that I've got with my neighbours, a dispute that I've just had from the loss adjusters next door. They're trying to underpin their house, and they won't do it unless I remove my ancient apple, which is in the garden, which is just a travesty. And it's the same story as what I was trying to do with saving the plane tree. It's just another insurance claim. And I'm severely worried about heave and other things, because all the other trees that have been felled within this one insurance claim for one house underpinning has destroyed 7 or 8 trees already, and I'm getting demands that I'm going to have to pay for the underpinning of my neighbours from a solicitor, because I've got a tree that they built their house on effectively. Their tree is older than their house. So that's my immediate issue, which I've got to respond to a solicitor for in the next 10 days. I'm seeking advice from this group. But also just to, it's amazing that I found you in a strange roundabout way, that we've been sort of liaising on these issues for a few years. I didn't realise that I was stumbling into this group, and I understand what you've been doing in Haringey. I'm sort of very much been following that. So
yeah, no, it sounds awful. We'll definitely be coming back to you, Al, and there'll be people in the chat who can give you advice. And also, we have a specific group, WhatsApp group, on insurance and trees, and Linda Cantrell, who's here, has a brilliant story of saving their oak tree in there, which hit the news a few months ago, is here too. So we will come back to you. Thanks very much. Yeah, and it's just something about this, these commercial pressures on trees, and how can we protect them against all these, these kind of commercial these kind of bullying as well, and how nature is just so degraded in their eyes. It's like not even a factor, or it's just something that can just be, superfluous, like detail. Let's just chop the tree, and then we'll avoid doing what we're supposed to do on the house. Christine, was that an older hand that you put up, or is it a new hand? A legacy hand, as they call it.
A new hand.
A new hand. Okay, go for it.
Johan, well, there's two things. I mean, one is there's this question of excess seasonal, I can't speak, seasonal movement. But what is normal seasonal movement? Because there must be normal seasonal movement. If there's no tree at all, the ground will still be shrinking and swelling. So on those trees, if they felled 6 or 7 trees already, then shouldn't they now go back to 12 years level monitoring? Because they may have solved the problem. I mean, how do they know there's still a problem? That's one thing. And the other thing, on the idea of mapping trees, the thing to do would be, I think, talk to the Community Planning Alliance, because they've got a really good map of places that are at risk, trees are at risk. And it's really easy to use. You just fill in a form that says what the threat is, and it just goes on their map. So if we had something like that, I think that would work better than a spreadsheet. Because if you have a spreadsheet and the whole country gets involved in it, you're going to have a really, really enormous spreadsheet.
I think that's yeah, it was kind of like a bit of a silly kind of like slightly jokey, but I agree if we could somehow link in with an existing digital map, so like the Community Alliance or iTree, the iTree survey, there's something that is mapping trees. I'm sure there's some digital companies that are doing this already, that if we could somehow partner with or have access to, or if they'd allow us to, I don't know how we'd do it, trees that are felled or trees that are threatened or both, I don't know.
Well, both. I mean, you just have to decide what your fields are. It's something, is the status of it. What's the status? Is it threatened? Is it felled? Is it saved? And where is it? And what's the nature of the threat? Pavement damage, whatever. Somebody's trying to build a garage, subsidence, because you need to sort of filter on a few things. And they who is it? Is it Tesco? Is it private owner? Is it the council? Is it Bovis? You kind of think about those fields, but then somebody just fills in the form and then it just goes on the map.
Yeah. I'm gonna bring Ali, you had your hand up, but also Kit and Al still have their hands up, so Ali?
It's up to you. Yeah, can I would just like to understand a bit more about like how the rights for rivers is standing, just to give us like an idea of what we're like thinking about, I guess. Like, is it literally the right of the river to exist and be undisturbed, or does it relate to human health as well? Because obviously, especially with urban trees, we want them around sort of selfishly for ourselves, don't we? So, would you then have a right to, does the tree have a right to be replaced if it has to be felled, or things like that, just for our own benefit, things like that. So I just wonder if Paul could explain a little bit more about how the movement is working with rivers at the moment, and also how, sorry, I know it's loads of questions, but how that goes from declarations into legislation. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So specifically rights of nature, the rights of nature approach is about taking a nature approach rather than an anthropocentric approach. So currently, most of our protections for nature are framed around human interests. So even TPOs, for instance, isn't just because the tree has a right to exist, it's because it's nice for humans to look at.
Yeah.
So obviously, a lot of these things are, a lot of these rights potentially are good for humans anyway, as we know, because if you don't chop down trees unnecessarily, that's good for humans. But actually, I think that trees, just by virtue of being part of the grand web of life, have a right to exist on this earth, and that humans shouldn't damage or destroy them unless there's a real need to, balancing up those different rights and interests. So it is about taking that different approach for the tree. In some ways, that means it's about finding ways to frame the rights of trees that can also, how do we frame a right for a tree that also does protect the things that we humans like? For instance, I think somehow the rights of older trees are more important than those of younger trees. there's something about the fact that they can't be replaced there that is important. But I haven't thought about how to frame that when you're talking about from the tree's interests. But clearly, the circumstances in which you would be allowed to chop down a 3,000-year-old yew tree are significantly less than a 5-year-old birch tree, right? Also, non-native trees. Arguably, I think there should be a right to destroy those, but that's quite an interesting question, which we'd have to think about.
Depends how old it is, really. I mean, could I just I was thinking about the campaign to save the oak tree outside the primary school that Julie was part of. Julie, are you still here? I don't know. And eventually was lost. Blore Holmes, the billionaire, felled it. And Sharon Hosegood, the notorious ARB consultant, signed that off. Sorry, I have a personal gripe about that woman because she presents herself as a really tree-loving professional, and she's been involved in an oak tree round the corner from me, writing the report that greenlit it to be built, its root zone to be built on. Anyway, but is there something about health and safety legislation that somehow, as well as the rights of trees, and having a very sort of, very sort of almost like, a sort of, as well as all those kind of like essential kind of human kind of and nature driven kind of, is there something, could we somehow link it in with how bloody important trees are for our lung health, for our mental health, as well as being wonderful beings in their own right somehow? Because if we carry on incrementally felling all the big canopy trees, over a number of years, we're creating lots of health problems on the streets that we live, not just in city centres, but probably, everywhere in villages and, wherever you live, really.
Yeah, I think also, people are so risk averse now that the sort of over caution with regards to, it's going to fall on someone's car or whatever, always seems to outweigh the right of the tree to be there. It's and it feels like it's just getting worse and worse. I know
Sorry, go ahead.
Some ARBs are really good and some, are less good because, I was talking to someone today who's got one in the family, and he says he has to make really, decisions he doesn't really like, because if he doesn't advise one way and something terrible happens, he, might end up in deep trouble down the line, when actually, really that tree might not be a problem, and it's doing lots of good stuff, and it should deserve to stay there. So I wonder whether dealing with that sort of that risk averse nature of stuff is
and
lowering, that goes to something I haven't actually mentioned, which is quite important, is that most of these rights can't be absolute. Most human rights aren't absolute, except the right to life. They're usually weighed against each other using a reasonableness and proportionality test, which I think we need to have in this tree rights thing, because obviously you can't say that you're never going to chop down a tree. If there's a dead tree hanging over a nursery school, or whatever, or a tree that's fallen over blocking the road, you could have to remove it.
Yeah, of course.
I have something quite specific.
It's about having that reasonableness and proportionality test.
Yeah, Kit, do you want to come in? Sorry.
I just have something specific to this to say, which is from the sort of the decision making at the moment only seems to evaluate risks to the public or the council, and does not consider a lot of the time the externalities involved in removing a tree, like the air pollution. It came down to with our little local battle about our plane trees was a weighing up of the costs that the council might be liable for this underpinning that might have to happen versus the caveat values of the trees. And I think, it's still quite anthropocentric because it's talking about, the benefit that the trees bring to people, but at least then that is a monetary value that you've put on it. I can't help but wonder if we could somehow make people who fell trees liable for that monetary value, which they are extracting from the community when they fell a tree, perhaps that might even the scales up a bit more, because at the moment it is only councils being afraid of like the liabilities on the other side of the scale. I don't know how legally possible it would be for a community to recoup, say, the caveat value of a tree that was felled from, you know, the insurer, because they have in effect taken that from the community. I wonder if that would help balance things a bit.
Yeah, I think that's a really excellent point. Absolutely. And I think, you know, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could somehow quantify, or is it quantify how, like, losing, you know, maybe take an example of a street, quite an urban street, which has gradually lost most of its mature trees over a number of years. If you could somehow prove that the number of respiratory disease, conditions in that street, had increased, or, I mean, I'm just thinking of Kissy Deborah, the case in London, which obviously she was living near a motorway and she died of air pollution. I mean, our particulate matter, our air pollution in London exceeds the WHO, I mean, I think although it would be wonderful to get our councils to get really tree huggy and hippy dippy about stuff, I think hard facts will really help this kind of framework, and data and stats and air pollution and lung health and,
But like in lieu of those things, which I think
yeah,
are all really important areas of research, already we have a tool that at least assesses the immunity value of the trees.
caveat, yeah, the
And
caveat.
at least when you're looking at a really mature, good plane tree with a decent canopy, it is almost always going to be worth more than the cost of the liability of underpinning a single property, for example. So if you can present that to councils, and if there were a risk that somebody might recoup that caveat, that value of that tree, that might make them think twice about saying, well, we'll fell it to avoid the cost of the underpinning, because they might become liable for the cost of the tree. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I think it depends on the size of the house
So,
as well,
sorry, can
because,
yeah.
sorry, just a really quick, because the plane tree near us, which was quite well known, the council said it costs, its caveat is about £70,000. Well, which I didn't, yeah, it was 130 years old. They said it was £70,000. The cost of the underpinning far surpassed the cost of
Who did that caveat value though? Because we had exactly the
council.
same thing with our trees. They said
Yeah.
that they were worth 220. There were 3 of them. We got an independent ARB to do an evaluation, and he said they were worth over £1 million. The 3
Wow.
of them together.
Okay, so that's great.
So those caveat values, it depends who's done them.
Right.
There are
Okay.
some, there might be some motivated assessing.
Yeah.
going on.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. So was that Paul? Did you come in there? Sorry.
Yeah, I was actually just trying to I just come up with something quite important as you were talking, which is great. So I love all this stuff, because as people talk, I'm trying to put this into a framework that works. Because initially, when you were talking about all of this stuff, I was like, well, actually, none of this is actually rights of trees, because this is all the stuff you're talking about is human interests, not the tree's intrinsic right to exist, which is what the rights of nature approach is about, right? But actually, it's something that's really important I hadn't thought about before. So thank you all for raising it, which is, well, I mentioned a moment ago about this balancing exercise, where in each instance you need to weigh up the tree's right to exist, right to live out its life cycle, whatever it might be, with human interests. Where that is done currently, only a very small amount of human interest is usually captured. So actually, it often ends up weighing against the tree, because actually you're only considering the interests of the insurer or the interests of the council, or a exaggerated risk in relation to personal injury. And actually, I think as part of this rights of trees framework, where there is to be a balancing exercise, again, where you weigh the tree's interests against human interests, not only must the tree's interest be weighed, but the full range of human interest must be weighed as well. And that in itself would make a massive difference. Because actually, if you just weigh the tree's right against the right of the insurer, they might say, well, actually, it's not reasonable because it's causing all this damage. But if you also weigh the air pollution impacts, the caveat value, the heave, the amenity value, the historical value of the tree, and that actually that's also a way of bringing in a lot of these human interests, which might be hard to categorize as rights of trees. Like, as I say, the historical interest in the tree, is that really a tree right? that's a human interest, but actually it does need to be brought into this process, and it's quite a neat way of doing it. So that's really nice. That's a key thing
Yeah,
that
I
was
also
bugging
think,
me that I figured
yeah,
out. So thanks.
I also think it's the ownership, which Kit touched on, like the ownership of the trees. Like the council own our trees. Well, why? Why should the council own our trees?
Well,
Why not
this is
street?
where we go into a guardianship
Why not?
approach.
Yeah, got it. So why not each street owns its own trees, and then the dispersal, the kind of focus on who's responsible for the liability gets dispersed, like much more diffused. Really, an insurance company is going to take a whole street like to court, like over their battle to save like one of their, I don't know.
I'm going to say something that I thought I'd never say, Gio, and that is that I actually think you're not being radical enough. And I actually think what we need to say is not that the street owns the trees, not that the council owns the trees, that the trees own themselves.
Yeah.
The trees are nobody's property, and they have guardians to represent themselves in human systems. But just like we don't say that babies that can't speak because they can't represent themselves, well, they're the property of their parents or the council. No, they're their own being. They own themselves, but they have guardians to help and represent them, and those guardians must act in the interests of that child, in the same way that guardians of trees must act in the interests of the trees. And I think just that flip alone could completely transform our relationship to trees if we take them out of anyone's ownership and just say actually they're owned by themselves.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, I think I'm gonna sort of, this has been really interesting, and it would be really great, Paul, if you could, I mean, keep us involved in this kind of whole
Yeah, I mean, key
process.
thing is I've taken some really great notes. I'll drop my email into the chat. If anyone just has any more thoughts on this, or even if you just want to ping me a random list of rights that you think are true sound. Obviously, I can't guarantee I'll adopt them, but like even just brainstorm stuff at me. Really great, and I'll happily incorporate. And what I might do then is sort of whack a first draft together, and if I can come back and briefly present it at the next meeting on it, and just sort of consult you all and see what you think.
And it would be very good at some point to find out which councils are interested, because I'm just out of interest, really. I mean, I know Islington.
It isn't.
Okay. Right. I've got, so going back to people who are new to our group first before updates. So I've got Al. I know we just spoke to you, Chris, and Holland. Is that right? So yeah. Hi, Holland. Would you like to, I'll go to you first. Please introduce yourself and what your tree situation is and what kind of support you're looking for from us. So welcome to the group.
Hi, everyone. My name's Holland. In my day job, I run a digital media agency in Bristol. I live in Devon, and I'm also a trained shamanic practitioner as well, which gives me a sort of real understanding of the depth of the value of trees from a spiritual aspect as well. But I want to talk today about the proposed quarry in the King Stainton area. So is it okay if I just share my screen really quickly?
Yeah, sure. I think you should just be able to, yeah.
So share, here we go. Okay, so we've taken some aerial videos, and I'm dressed very smartly today because I've just been interviewed by BBC Spotlight, which is the BBC for the southwest of Devon and Cornwall. So this is amazing exposure for the campaign. And they also were able to put up a 4K drone today, and it was sunny. So they're going to everybody's going to get to see the forest that's proposed to be destroyed. So what you see in this.
Sorry, can I just say, Holland, we can't see your images actually.
You can't?
No. I'll tell you what, I'm going to make.
Here we go. Here we go. There you go.
Okay, there you go.
Sorry, I hadn't pressed the button. So yes, Sibelco, Belgian-owned mining company, owns this piece of land in Devon, and it's basically home to this huge area of trees and nature reserve. Some really beautiful big trees, as you can see here. So all of this is in their plans to be destroyed. Every single tree, all 3 of the rugby pitches, everything you see here will be destroyed under their plans that they submitted just a couple of months ago. So I've started a new campaign as soon as we found out about this, called Save Our Trees. So we set up a new website, saveourtrees.org.uk, and it's snowballed pretty quickly. Obviously, people are up in arms about the destruction of such a large area of forest, and such in an area where there isn't much more forest around. This is the last area of forest for miles and miles around. So for all the animals that live here, it's a desperate move by the clay quarries to try and get more resources and more minerals. They're running out of clay, so they're now pushing into areas that are fully forested, right alongside homes as well. So there's the other issue with this, is around the River Tean as well, which if I show you just on the map here, so this is the area here. So if we zoom out a little bit, you really get to see that this is the only sort of forested area remaining here. And the mining company, the quarrying company, have basically done this elsewhere. So, and they're already going to take out, they've already got permission to move this stream across to here and take out all of these trees here above. And then they want to take out all of this here as well. So obviously it's a ludicrous proposal. And if you see here, the River Tean, there's already a quarry on one side of it, which, as you can see here, flooded and destroyed all the footpaths last winter. So there's so many angles to this campaign. Obviously, a big one is around the quality of the River Tean, because if they put another deep pit on the other side, you can have heavy industry both sides of the River Tean for over a mile. And you know, there's otters that live in here. So and water quality is a massive issue as well. So it's a ludicrous plan. And what I'll do is I'll drop in the chat here a link to the Save Our Trees website here, and to the video that I just showed there as well. So what we're doing is, yeah, it's all sort of it's all snowballed really quickly. We've got 13,000 followers. And we've got a lot of interest now picking up from the media. So we've been interviewed from the BBC today. But it's a lot. It's a lot, and you know, I'm trying to do my day job at the same time. But this could easily be a full-time job just doing this. And so the next steps are to try and look at tree protection orders on certain parts of this area. And so maybe some advice on the best way to approach that might be good. Actually, if I just share my screen again very quickly here, hopefully.
Can I just ask, has this planning application been approved by your council?
Not yet. So we're ahead of the game.
Yeah.
And so they've put in pre-planning scoping documents. So the plans, they're hoping to submit planning towards the end of this year, but I think that it's probably going to be delayed. Obviously, we've got the Biodiversity Net Gain 2024 laws really on our side, because to cut down such a huge area of mature broadleaf native forest, they'll have to replace, each of those large trees can't be replaced with one sapling, has to be replaced with, a lot of saplings. So as far as I can tell, it's very unlikely that they'll be able to very easily get that through. And I think we've got very strong levers to stop this. But yeah, I just wanted to maybe see if any of you got any ideas about TPOs. Some of the most amazing parts of this part down here that we saw on the video. And so getting TPOs on this area, we can prove utility because of the people who use the fishing lakes, enjoy the trees a lot. And then also up here, we have this sort of big bank. You can't really see on the video, but there's a big bank of large 25-meter oak trees all the way down here and all the way around here as well, and really mature trees here, oak trees as well. So I'm thinking of trying to get tree protection orders on this area here that can be seen from the houses as a sort of starting point, rather than trying to just get a tree protection order on the whole thing, trying to sort of perhaps and then also perhaps looking at getting tree protection orders on the trees along the River Tean, because they want to build from here. They want to build an HGV bridge across here, and they want to just go straight into here, and so there's the sort of green corridor issue around, around the Devon. Devon has a green corridor that it has to sort of maintain as well there. So,
yeah, and if you can find evidence of bats and other rare kind of, reptiles and as well. I mean, I know the Labour government's dismantling lots of the kind of protections for line, but you would hope, yeah. Ali, do you want to come in?
Sorry about that. Hi, Holland. Nice to meet you. We've emailed a bit. I've got loads of questions. So is the whole area publicly accessible at the moment, or just the fishing lakes?
just the fishing lakes and the rugby pitches. Everything else is closed off.
So you can't. I don't suppose you know if any of the trees are registered ancient or veteran, or have you not been able to get in to find them?
No, it's basically grown over 100 years of them stopping quarrying. Over some of the trees are probably 150 years old, maybe. So there's no ancient trees, but there's a lot of big trees here threatened.
Yeah, no, so it's just if as we were saying earlier, if there's ancient or veteran ones, then the Woodland Trust will get involved. Have you spoken to them?
I've just heard back from them today, and they've asked me for more details about the planning portal and everything. So I've given them some more details.
Cool. Okay. And I was just going to say, Mark Ashdown from Bristol, I could put you in touch with him. He knows everything there is to know about BNG. So he will definitely be able to help with that. But I don't suppose they've done a tree survey, have they? So
but I think they probably do have to as part of their environmental statement, I'd imagine.
yeah. I mean, you're right. The BNG on this would be absolutely like mind blowing. I don't know. I can't believe they even think they're going to get away with it.
I know.
Yeah. Aren't they talking now about BNG, but they're allowing developers and companies to be able to plant trees like miles away now?
Yeah, but the thing about that is it costs a lot. Using mitigation is the most expensive way of doing it. Really, ideally, they would want to plant trees in the next field over. That would be the cheapest way of doing it.
I mean, it's absolutely appalling. We'll do all we can to support you. I mean, they hate bad publicity, so loads and loads of bad press on it, as much as you can get. Sounds like you're doing an amazing job, but there are people around you supporting you. I mean, that's really important. Are there people in your group? Do you have a group, or do you have a core group, or because sometimes you're just on your own?
It's basically just been me. I've created the website, I've created the social campaigns, created the videos,
Amazing.
the drone footage, and but now we've got 13,000 followers, and we've got a town hall meeting booked for the Friday the 24th. So if anyone is in Devon, your support would be massively appreciated. We need to show the BBC that there's a massive turnout of people, that people aren't just going to sit back and let this happen. So I've got a lot of people volunteering to do leafleting. So we're going to leaflet the whole town and try and get a huge turnout for that. And I need to start sort of getting groups together and getting some sort of
supportive MP, a supportive Green MP or Green MP.
Quite the opposite. I've done a bit of a write-up on our website if you wanted to look later. He's just completely, it feels like he's completely, he feels like he's a company man.
Oh dear, he's probably getting paid by whatever the company is.
It feels like he's fully getting paid by Sibelco. That's how it feels. He's fully towing that line. He even went as far as saying, "There's no way we'll be able to stop this in our meeting." And I was like, "Well, that sounds a bit
fighting spirit there."
Yeah.
Well, you're doing an amazing thing. So, Kit, come in.
Yeah, really sorry to chip in again, but some of this land in question is open to the public, right?
Some of it,
and is generally used by the public freely. There's no gate to come in, or you can just go there.
It's private. You have to be a fishing club member or a rugby club member.
Okay. Because if you are able, as the general public, to go onto land and use it, and you can prove there's a history of that, then obviously you could go down the sort of village green route, or you're in Devon, so you could even start looking at registering it in other ways. But sorry.
Yeah, no. And is it privately owned then, this land?
Sibelco owns it, so they're a fully privately owned Belgian company. They own the whole thing.
It doesn't matter about the ownership though, it matters about the access. That's worth
Right.
knowing. Like if you've got some private
Yeah.
land that people do generally use as public land, you can register it. So
Yeah, they've done this on purpose, I'm sure, kept it private. Mm.
Yeah. Why? How is it possible that a foreign company can own part? Yeah, I mean it's happening all the time. Our land is privatized and sold off to these companies. Shocking, really shocking. I was going to.
Someone,
Sorry, yeah, Paul.
yeah, someone wrote in the chat, and I agree. Also, really look into the wetland angle here. Wetlands are often have a higher biodiversity rating for biodiversity net gain than woodlands sometimes, especially if it's not ancient woodland. So really think about that and all of the different things that could be in those lakes that could get damaged or destroyed. And also you may have time to try and introduce things into those lakes which have high biodiversity gain, if you get my drift, high biodiversity value. And two other things, I've literally just already messaged someone who I know who lives in Teen Grace, just down the road, who's just retired, is looking for environmental saving projects and nature connection projects. So I've sent the whole thing to her, so I'll let you know if anything comes from that.
Wow.
And also consider, I don't know if you know about Oakenwood in Kent, but they saw off a quarry that was due to destroy. It wasn't ancient woodland, to be fair, but it was still a massive woodland. And they saw that one off, so maybe worth getting in touch with them and see if they've got any tips or any help that might guide you.
Was that through the Woodland Trust who were supporting them as well? I wonder whether you
Well,
should.
they were, but yeah, it was also Stuart Jeffrey, who's a Green councillor at Maidstone.
It might be worth getting in touch with the Woodland Trust as well, Holland, because
Definitely.
they do sort of get behind certain campaigns. And also
especially if it's quite a big one, that they'll often select big ones and amplify them nationally. And this, to me, it feels like it could be big enough to become a national issue, rather than just a kind of purely local one.
Yeah. And the Forestry Commission as well. I'd get in touch with them as well, because sometimes they look into, I don't know, they look into sort of when a big area of woodland's going to be felled, they look into the legalities of it as well. I don't know, would you ever go down the legal route, try and fight it legally if you could? I mean, if you could raise the money through a legal fund.
So the new website looks absolutely fantastic, and luckily, running a digital media agency, I've got a whole team of guys and we've got access to a lot of server resources and all that sort of stuff. So we've been able to throw together a really good website, if I do say so myself. But we've got 2 corporate sponsorship slots above the fold there, and we're in talks with some big names. We're in talks with Ecotricity and EcoTalk Mobile. So we're looking for some big money sponsorship for those slots, really, because this really could be a national case, and really could go the distance. And if it goes to judicial review, eventually we're going to need 50k probably to defend it, and so or to win it. But one step at a time. And
of course,
Sorry, would you not get ours cover? Ours convention, you wouldn't need that much, I wouldn't have thought.
This is all completely new to me. I've got absolutely no idea. So yes, we will need some legal support, and we've started fundraising already. So we've set a really realistic target of 5k initially, but then plus corporate sponsorship, we're hoping to aim to raise about 30k, because we want to get independent hydrology report.
Ali, do you want to explain what the Aarhus Convention is? Do you know what that is, Holland?
No idea.
Okay.
Yes, basically, I mean, I guess you do a judicial review if planning permission was granted, and then it just if it's basically your liability will be maximum £5,000. If you're a group, if you register as a group, it'd be £10,000. So, and then the sort of trade-off is that if you win the other side, which would be would probably be the council, because you'd be taking them to court. They would only pay up to £30,000 or £35,000 of your cost. So you have to find a friendly lawyer, but luckily we know one. So I'll email you her details afterwards. And I've also got a really good contact with the Woodland Trust locally, who she's helping us with some threatened woodland in Plymouth at the moment. So I'll put you in touch with her as well.
Yeah. And it basically caps the costs, so you wouldn't be, liable for millions.
It's basically, if it's like an environmental case and it's like David and Goliath and it's completely prohibitive, if you don't have a cost cap. It's for that essentially. So that, I mean, I got it with my case, both actually, and it just makes it much less scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, much less, but it sounds great. I mean, I'm
Yeah, you're doing an amazing job. Well done.
yeah, it sounds
Thank you
brilliant.
so much.
And yeah, maybe you could leave the email you're happy for people to contact you on in the chat. So
Absolutely, yeah.
that would be really useful. Thanks very much. So I'm sure we'll keep coming back to this one. So keep us posted. It'll be lovely to see you at the regular meetings, etc. I'm going to go to Anne now, Anne Wilson, who has another, well, you've had lots of problems with woodlands being chopped down near you. Anne, do you want to come on?
Yes, if that's all right. In fact, we're not getting anywhere with winning our campaign, but I did want to update you. And actually, some of what we've tried to do might well be relevant to, was it Holland?
Yeah.
Because we've tried every which way. And I'm sorry Tamara's left, because this particular woodland, this ancient woodland, is owned by the Woodland Trust. But I'm still happy to do it because, as I say, there may be stuff in it and stuff that you can possibly put in your toolkit as well. Also, Paul's mentioned how important it is to protect the older trees. This is a seriously important ancient woodland. We've also, Kit, was it mentioned Cavat? We've tried Cavat, hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of trees. And one of the trees in this wood, done by Chris Neelan, who designed Cavat, has been valued at £5 million, but it's still being regularly destroyed. So just to introduce myself, if you don't know me, I'm Anne Wilson. I've spent the last 12 years learning about trees, even studied ecology and conservation at Warwick, which nearly killed me because I hadn't written an essay since school days. And I'm a Coventry tree warden. So I'm going to try and read most of this from notes because I tend to get carried away. So some of you already know that for the last few years, we've been desperately trying to save this small ancient Arden. It's part of the Forest of Arden woodland near Coventry called Pars Coppice. A bit of history for those who don't. I say it's a sorry saga, I'm afraid, but there may be a few bits that are useful to some of you. The Woodland Trust have owned the wood since 1987, and their policy was always to leave it unmanaged, just keeping the footpaths clear and the fences intact. We think it's had non-intervention for getting on for 100 years, and its habitat has become incredibly rare. It's even been called the most important wood in the Midlands. Then in 2018, the Woodland Trust decided to lease the wood to Warwickshire Wildlife Trust. And their original plan, despite the wood having a TPO, the whole wood is TPO'd, which I think is quite unusual for a woodland. Their plan was to cut huge rides through it to harvest 30% of its ancient trees for biomass. And this is biomass is quite a serious problem, but that's another issue. They didn't carry out any surveys or historical research or anything. So protests from local people, but mainly help from our MP, who was fantastic. Maybe I shouldn't mention Zara Sultana, but she really was good. And they managed to stop the original plan. But rather than back down, the Wildlife Trust applied for a smaller licence from the Forestry Commission, just been mentioned, to fell 12 small trial plots. The first 4 plots have done considerable damage in the wood, big vehicles driven through the fences, through the bluebells, trees felled and dumped on the ground amongst the rare flora and across some of the paths, big waterlogged ruts. This is a wood that's never had machinery in its life. Main paths, and some of them unwalkable. Needless to say, local people hugely upset. Interestingly, after the first 2 plots a couple of years ago, we found that the felling had actually exceeded the Forestry Commission's licence, the volume of the licence, but all 12. So we thought, we reported it, but rather than prosecute, the Forestry Commission decided to issue a further licence. This despite copious objections from local people and advice, important This is advice from the top woodland ecologists, who again might be able to help, telling them that the woods should be left alone. And interestingly, then our MP came back to us and told us that someone at DEFRA had said we could appeal against the forestry licence. This is where Canopy comes in. And that the rest of it is thanks to the contacts that Canopy have given us. So we sought, I'm sure this is who Ali's going to mention, or Paul, obviously, but we sought advice from solicitor Alice Goodenough regarding the appeal that we were trying to do, and then about a complaint to the Forestry Commission. They had told us that members of the public could not appeal and a licence could not be rescinded. The FC Forestry Commission's final response to our complaint referred us to the Office of Environmental Protection, OEP. So we took the issue to them. We also sought advice, again, something else, possibility, Environmental Law Foundation. In fact, the OEP sent us to the Environmental Law Foundation. And again, thanks to Canopy, we sought advice from Paul Powlesland's organisation, Lawyers for Nature, which we've heard a lot about tonight. They were quite encouraging because the OEP had not dismissed our concerns immediately, which is apparently quite common. They actually decided to investigate, but Paul's people did tell us that it might take a while. So our hopes were raised, only to be dashed very recently after 6 months of waiting for a decision. The OEP finally decided that the Forestry Commission had not broken environmental laws by issuing licences that we claimed had supported the destruction of the habitat of protected species. Now, again, if you've got protected species in the current threat that Holland was mentioning, it's again Office of Environmental Protection. They have done some things that they have actually stopped, but they didn't stop ours. But again, it may be worth the contact. Once again, thanks to Canopy, we've just shown the wood to James Chambers. James did a presentation for the group, and Geo introduced him as a member of the Ancient Tree Forum. Again, if you've got old trees, get the Ancient Tree Forum involved. But he was also introduced as an assessor for trees submitted to the Woodland Trust's Ancient Tree Inventory, which I just mentioned earlier to Tamara. So I contacted him, and he's just been to have a look at the wood, and he's made some helpful suggestions, one of which is to put a lot more of the trees on the Ancient Tree Inventory. And because he felt that he literally was going, well, you could put that one on, you could put that one on, you could put again, interesting, because there are 6, we put one, this £5 million we put on, and we didn't realise it had actually gone on because we never heard from them, but they must have sent somebody like James to assess it, and they put 5 more trees on, and he basically went round the wood with us pointing out. So we're going to try and do that, see if it helps. But if anybody here has got any other suggestions, we'd obviously be most grateful, because we're running out of ideas and we're currently just dreading the next felling.
Yeah, and this is really shocking. So this is owned by the Woodland Trust, this piece?
It's owned by the Woodland Trust. I used to go round with the area officer maybe once a year, and she was adamant that their policy was not to touch it. Keith Kirby, who's probably the top country's ecologist since Rackham raved about it. Keith Kirby has told the Woodland Trust and the Wildlife Trust that they shouldn't be touching it.
Right.
It's a copy. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I'm really curious as to what benefit. So the Woodland Trust basically making money out of felling the trees for biomass?
Oh, no, the Woodland Trust, well, they did talk. What happened was the officer changed, and from a policy of non-intervention, they decided it needed managing, and at that point, actually, even by the Woodland Trust, biomass was mentioned. But then we started challenging this group who we met on the ecology course, actually, and the tree wardens started challenging, and the next minute they'd handed it over to the Wildlife Trust, and they are allowing them to literally There are bats, there are 10 red-listed birds, rare plants, rare trees, and
So
they're just being...
isn't this quite a scandalous news story that the Woodland Trust and the Wildlife Trust are selling?
Well, we've tried. It's been in the local papers, it's been in the Times. I think everybody thinks the trusts know what they're doing, and
what percentage?
James Chambers said he'd never heard of this before, but actually we've had people come from other Cambridge, somebody from Sheffield contacted us. I think you probably know him, Professor at Sheffield, basically telling us to keep fighting because it's happening all over the place. They lease woodlands and they get sold for biomass.
Money. And what percentage of your woodland, the ancient woodland, has been felled thus far? Like, can you put
it's not a huge percentage, but it's all, I mean, they're ancient, they're seriously ancient. The coppices are absolutely fabulous, they're all healthy. There are lots of excuses why they're doing it. I don't want too much of this to be recorded, really, because it is a really difficult situation, and we are anybody who tries to help us has been told we're troublemakers and we don't know what we're talking about.
Right.
And we've tried lots of well-known people, and they won't get involved because and it won't do their reputations any good.
How many very important trees have been felled? So when you say they're felled right to the ground, they're just completely felled for biomass.
Well, they're claiming they're recoppicing them, but basically they're just chopping them off.
So they're not coppicing. They're not coppicing.
They're not proper. You can't proper coppice trees that haven't been coppiced for 100 years. They're just chopping them off and they're just ending up as a bush. And the rare moths that they found in there only live in the blossom in these small leaf lime coppices. So they've gone. The moth chap's been in tears with us. I mean, I really don't want too much to be put on, because it's just devastating, really.
If people want to contact you, is there a good email that maybe you could put in the chat if they needed to find out more information or wanted to help support in some way? Is there a good?
I can happily put my email in the chat. And if anything, James Chambers is going back to the Ancient Tree Forum for us. Because there are people there that, again, we've tried before, but and they've told, one of them from the Ancient Tree Forum did a course for us on ancient and veteran trees. So got a qualification in that.
I mean,
he came round afterwards and he said they should never bring machinery, and they told us they wouldn't. They told us it would all be done by...
It's a really shocking story. I mean, I do find that when you get into kind of finding, when you get into sort of tree campaigning and you get to know some of these very established conservative kind of charities and groups, what you find is sometimes they ignore things going on because they're getting favours in other areas. So what I found with the London Wildlife Trust is they wouldn't really help us with mass destruction of network rail trees, although it's private land, so it's more complex, because they were getting money from Network Rail for particular projects, cherry-pick projects that they were interested in developing, nature restoration projects. And sometimes they'll turn a blind eye to things that are going on which are patently wrong because they're getting there's other benefits and partnerships. And so this is very worrying. Anyone want to feed in here or ask any questions before we move on to the next update?
No, I'm sorry, I've silenced everybody. The TPO, interestingly, we were told that would be published and there would be a public, there were supposed to be public meetings. The TPO was supposed to be put out for the public to comment. It never happened. So all sorts of things done underhand, really, that have pushed it through. And it's say that people have been weeping in this wood on a number of occasions.
I mean, what would really help us at Canopy, I suppose, is like sort of some visual documentation of the sort of destruction going on, and because it's hard for me to visualize what they're doing to the trees and the ones that they've felled and how damaging it all is, and pictures and images. I'm assuming you have like visual documentation.
Oh, yes. I will send you some photographs, and I'm sorry. I was trying not to get overheated, but it's very difficult.
It sounds absolutely awful and really shocking, actually. And
can I just ask a quick question? And so the TPO's gone now, that's been removed.
No, the TPO, the wood is TPO'd, but the rugby council officer promised he would do something about it. He would put public notices up. He never did, and he basically told the Forestry Commission that the trees were all falling down, and therefore he agreed with the. I mean, it's
Oh, so
and
the felling's exempt from the planning process because they're
yeah, I
dangerous.
think so, because because a license was issued, but it was basically issued on misinformation from both the Wildlife Trust and the tree officer.
Right. Okay.
So
Yeah, it's shocking that we can't even look after these little pockets of ancient woodland properly. I'm really sorry, Anne. Thanks for sharing. Very, very depressing. But important that we keep fighting. If we can lend support, if you could write an email perhaps asking how we can, or perhaps even like how we can lend support to this and to try and raise. I mean, I feel like this is a really big news story, and even though it's been in the Times already, maybe it needs revisiting. And because trees make the news now, tree stories make the news, and this is really shocking. And it's like, I know we have the Woodland Trust as some of our friends here, they come along, but I mean, if they're organizations,
I did ask Adam. It was suggested I wrote to Adam McCormack about because I think he runs this inventory, and I wrote to him asking about the local person who'd assessed it, and could he give me their details so they could come and look at some of the other trees with me. No reply.
Yeah, it sounds very
In fairness, in his defense, they are very stretched as well. So
Yeah,
sometimes
well, that's fine. I just needed a contact. I will, and in fact, James Chambers was saying you need to try all the people you've tried in the past, try them again.
Yeah.
So I will go back.
I think it's worth approaching the press again. I think we're going to have to move on though. So thanks very much, Anne. Al, shall we go to you now? You've been patiently waiting to tell us your story.
Thank you. Yeah, just sort of one build on Anne and just a sort of point for the group really, because I feel like I've heard these stories a lot, and I think there's a lot of connections with these stories we have. I just wondered in the group how we can connect some of these stories from different places. I mean, I only hear of local issues, but we've been fighting a wetland and a place on a developer's site that bought the site very, very cheap off the council. The trees are all TPO'd, but they've unfortunately, have been diseased or have had a problem where they've felled TPO trees. And actually, because of the council in question, I don't want to overstep what I'm saying here on a recorded call, but there has been some sort of very different objective opinions by different council members as to who's dealing with it and why, because of for other reasons, for either developmental or money or financial gain, reasons as to develop a brownfield or a site that has a lot of wildlife on it. So it's unfortunately a very familiar story, but I wonder if there's any way that this group, and sorry, I'm very new to Canopy and understanding what you do, but you're connected with a lot of different organisations in different ways. How do we collate all of this so it's one bigger picture? And I'm assuming that's what you're doing.
I can't. So Al, if you go to our website, I don't know if you've seen it, we're like an umbrella group. So we've got 40 odd members, and we do try whenever we can to share. I always say, like, if you've got a story you want me to share on our social media, we can. We haven't got a big following yet, but we do put news stories on our website. But I appreciate it.
I'll happily take that away, and because I'm involved in these environmental issues anyway through other charities that I sort of
I mean, so going back to something we were talking about earlier about lobbying and trying to change the law. The more members we have, the better. Essentially, the bigger our voice. So, if even the people who've signed up as member organisations, if they got their members to sign up as individual members of Canopy, then we would have a bigger membership. And it will, it might not save the day, but it doesn't hurt, does it? And and the more stories are shared, and the more people know about things. Better,
great, because I was, I'm trying to, for another charity I work with, we're trying to have a museum of protest, and mainly it's about this environmental angle. and actually where my story is going. So if you don't mind, I'm going to crack on with what I want to talk about, which is really, really deeply personal to me, and it's not a wide issue. You know, everyone's sharing all these stories, but effectively, I have an ancient apple in my garden. It's I believe the variety is a Peasgood nonsuch. It's an old apple. It's a Lincolnshire type of apple, and my house was built on an orchard. This tree in my garden has fallen. It fell a long, long time ago and has grown up, and I believe it to be the last apple tree of the orchard, of the site that the houses in the 30s were built on. It's a beautiful tree. It means a lot to me. I don't know how much community asset it has because it's in my garden. I bought the house mainly because there was a nice apple tree in the middle of the garden. It's, you know, it's probably on its way out, but it's probably a very rare breed, a rare type of apple. I've not thought about TPOing it or going down that route, but I've looked at sort of how to TPO a tree, and it's because it's just a privately owned tree. I don't think I can go down that route. Not that I necessarily want to. I don't want to cut my nose.
You should be able to. I think you should, especially. I mean, if there's any, can anybody else see it, or is it just from your garden?
Well, I mean, you can vaguely see it from other gardens, but it's, you know, it's just a tree. So my story is, my neighbour, about 3 years ago, I received a letter from a loss adjuster saying, remove this tree and that tree, please. And I said, yeah, I've got a cherry next to your borderline. I completely removed it. Understandable. I know how invasive the roots are. And please remove the apple tree. I said, you know, actually, I don't think you've got your maths correct. You haven't given me a heave calculation. In southeast London, where I live, we're just on clay soil. Clay shrinks. You know, recently we've had some very hot summers. Environmental change means that the clay shrinks and contracts more. And it's a problem. So, but the study they had asked of eucalyptus to be removed. That was removed. All the vegetation from the front garden of the property that they want to have the underpinning has been removed. We've had 3 massive conifers removed. I mean, these trees weren't necessarily trees that were very cool, but they were taking a lot of water out of the soil. Also, we had we were talking about the plane tree earlier. That's just up the hill from the road. So my house is on a slope. Water comes down, it's in the clay, it gets caught by the trees that were in there. 3 very big, or 4 very big trees have been removed in the line to the neighbour's property. I've had a very damning report saying that it's moved very much recently. The property in different points has moved. I've also had there's been a root sample taken next to the property. It came saying that there was an apple tree type of roots. I have a very small pear tree right next to their wall, which the root probably would have been from when they took the sample, but they're asking me to remove the apple tree, which is ancient. When I dug some footings recently to do an extension, there was not a single root in the soil sample, absolutely nothing there. Yet I don't have any way to fight this. So it's my word or a tree surgeon's word saying, you know, the root ball is somewhere else. I've seen evidence there's no root ball. I have evidence there's a pear tree next to their wall where their sample would have proved that's the sample that's come out. There's no way an apple tree is invasive to their property, yet they're asking me to remove it. And I've just received a solicitor's letter saying I have 12 or 14 days to reply.
Can I just ask how far away the apple tree is from the property that's damaged?
It's closer to mine than it is to theirs. It's about 6 or 7 meters. But I have a tree surgeon's word, but there's no way that a tree surgeon will stand up against insurance companies. If I mention it to my insurance company, which I haven't done yet, which I know I should have done, they will tell me to remove the tree. You know, I have no recourse, no person to talk to, no independent specialist that I can say, or give me proof or evidence that this is not happening. And I have no realistic heave calculation on what my tree is. The survey says that it's early mature tree, of which, you know, the tree's older than the house. I sort of flippantly said when I got heated on the conversation, I said, would your client please remove their house off my tree roots?
Yeah, exactly.
and it's just I have no recourse other than to remove the tree at my own cost, to remove my own tree that I don't want to get rid of, which has a lot of value to me. And it's a very individual case. It's sad that I'm not even talking to you about this. It's a very, very sad thing, but it doesn't affect anyone. I don't know how to put any independent value on the tree because it's no value to anyone else other than me. I'm just at a place where I just don't know what to do. Realistically, I should chop it down.
This is shocking. Yeah. Kit, do you want to come in here? You had your.
Yeah. Is there any physical damage to the other property at all, or is it just levels monitoring that they've?
Levels monitoring. Apparently, it's got worse in the last year, but we've had a dry year, and since then, there's been 3 trees removed.
But if there's no damage, then what are they claiming? If there's no cracks or damage to the house, there has to be damage.
Yeah.
Oh no, there's cracks in their house. There's cracks in everyone's house.
Everyone's house. We've been in a drought. Yeah.
But are the cracks characteristic of subsidence? Because, like you say, everyone's got cracks in the house.
Well,
but
I don't know. I'm not a professional. I've no idea.
The question there actually might be worth eventually talking. Obviously, as you say, your insurer probably will say to chop down the tree, which is not great, not what we want. But it might be worth talking to them because the other insurer should have produced a structural engineer's report. And it should say what they think of the cracks and whether there actually needs to be underpinning, because sometimes there isn't really a call for underpinning, and it's just kind of weird risk management thing where they've got levels data and they're worried that it might happen.
I'm assuming that might have happened because that's what they want to do. I mean, they basically are saying we're going to have to charge you for a root barrier protection and underpinning for your client's property.
Wait a minute, hang on. They're going to underpin it and do root barrier protection?
I don't know. Either way.
That doesn't quite make sense either. And actually, it's possible because if they underpin it, then that is protecting that building against subsiding in the future. So there's no need to do a root barrier really. Like the clay can move all it likes, it's been underpinned. They've done that work, right? So yeah, I think it might not actually be a terrible shout to talk to your insurer.
Okay.
Which I mean, then like you say, there is a good chance they will say just cut the tree down. So not top of the list maybe, but it does sound a bit odd.
Yeah, to me, have you seen the full engineering report and the arboricultural report?
I've seen the arboricultural report, but it doesn't talk about my pear tree, and they're telling me that it's based on a root sample.
But they need to, but don't they need to prove that the root is from the?
Well, I've asked them to prove that.
Tree?
Yeah, I've asked them to prove that, and they haven't done that yet.
Right. Well, they'll go on delaying for years. They've got millions of pounds. They can go on just these cases are, in Haringey we have the same issue. We're on very, very dense clay, and it's a rigged system. They blame all the vegetation and the trees because they're trying to wriggle out of doing the work on the houses, and it's quite clear what they're doing. It's shocking. I mean, we've been in a drought, the worst drought since 2022. I think we're in a climate emergency. I mean, I think you need to just hold your nerve. I know it's intimidating. They use bullying tactics, and I think often the evidence they go on is very flimsy, and they rely on a complacent system and people feeling really unnerved and complying. And I think we could try and get some professionals. When you say, I'm imagining you can't really, could you afford to ask for independent surveys, or are you saying that they're not accepting them because you said you had an RB looked at it? Is that right?
I just had a tree surgeon look at it, and he said the way that the tree's fallen, actually the root ball would be the opposite direction of it. That's why you've not seen any roots or any evidence of roots.
Right.
And I'm worried that if I do.
Sorry, the tree has fallen, but it's still growing, basically.
Oh, the tree fell years ago.
Okay.
It's been on the ground.
Sounds wonderful. It sounds like a wonderful tree, by the way.
It's a gnarly old rubbish tree.
Yeah, no, it's not rubbish. It's the older, the older. Unlike people, the older we get, the more. But actually, trees get more and more beneficial as they get older. Ali?
I was just going to say, I definitely would look into get a TPO on it, and it might actually be worth getting it verified as an ancient or veteran tree if it's that old. And that would give it protection, and the Woodland Trust would help you then. Also, can't they do DNA testing on roots to find out exactly which tree it is?
So
radar.
My understanding is normally they do just microscopic analysis. They don't necessarily do DNA testing.
Okay.
You could get some radar equipment. James Chambers might. I don't know. Where are you based, Al?
Lewisham Way.
I'm wondering if it's worth Al contacting James Chambers because he's got lots of radar equipment. I mean, they have quite sophisticated sort of radar stuff. They could actually look into the ground and see what's going on. I mean, that would be a way to prove conclusively which routes are where, and I don't know if you could get someone to.
But it's some of the smaller routes that cause the water uptake. Is that
fine feeding
I don't know. But what I would say is apple trees are really slow growing compared to other things, and it predates the other house. So I don't understand this. I think maybe see if you can't get their insurer to share the structural engineer's report with you. Just and if just maybe see what actually the problem is, because you might find there's no actual damage to the house. You might find all sorts of things, but this does seem a bit odd.
Yeah, and you need to get an independent eye on that report as well, what they're saying. I mean, we do have Jeff Duckett here. He's not on the call now, but he surveyed houses. He's a professor of botany, but he did survey houses for 40 years. He's retired now. He's getting on a bit, as he says himself. But he may be able to look at the report that you've been presented with, and because sometimes they kind of, to the layperson's eye, they won't be seeing certain things, but they may be, it might be good to have a professional eye on it. But obviously, money is probably an issue.
This is the thing, this is the problem I have. Why would I fight this other than I like my tree? There's a lot of cost to it. So how basically is that, what sort of help can I get that is informational, professional, and that I can present at a low cost? Because otherwise I'm just.
I know. Linda's not on the call anymore. Linda from
she's just left. It's a real shame because she was in exactly the same situation. She had loss adjusters were after their oak tree, and she beat it. She's just gone, unfortunately, but it is possible. I mean, a friend of mine she was being threatened by an insurer and a neighbour's insurance company. They wanted all the trees around felling. She just held out, and then eventually they gave up.
Yeah.
So it's not unheard of.
Okay. Al, what's your email, if you don't mind? Do you mind me taking it and sending it to Linda Cattrall Taylor, who has been in the news because they saved an oak tree in their garden of a similar age? Or yeah, is that right? Because
please do, yeah.
She just left the call. She probably had something she had to go and do.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, anyone I can talk to in the meantime. I'm obviously just nervous having a solicitor's letter.
Yeah, but honestly, they use all these kind of tactics all the time, and you just have to hold your nerve and just think they're not going to actually. They can't legally. It's kind of they would have. There are certain steps they have to go through. They're obviously intimidating letters. Normally, a lot of people sort of get intimidated by them and just
scary, aren't they?
Well, yeah, they are. But actually, I mean,
it works, doesn't it? That's why they do it.
Yeah, but yeah.
Al, what have they done much monitoring since all the other trees? How long ago were all the other trees cut down?
Year to 1, 2, 3 years.
And have they been monitoring since then?
Yes, they have. They've sent me a recent report saying that it's shifted more recently.
But wouldn't that just be heave?
Well, I mean, the trees that they've felled probably are 10 meters, 11, 12 from their property, further away than my apple. I think it is likely to be heave. If they're on a slope and the trees are up the slope, likely that the ground has shrunk further where the points are. Anyone I've spoken to has said, this is likely caused by heave damage and, or exacerbated by it, plus with the environmental issues, the hot weather we've had.
Yeah, it's been insanely dry.
I mean, logically.
Yeah. And the thing is, there's going to be a flooding risk now because all these trees have been felled. So there's now going to be a massive flood risk, which is what, you cut off your nose to spite your face with these insurance companies. They're saying the future is kind of uninsurable because of the floods that are going to happen, the flash floods, the droughts. So actually, they've created another issue for themselves, the insurance companies, with more flood risk now.
But this is part of why I was like, maybe talk to your insurer, because they're going to be concerned about the increased risk of flood risk. They're going to be concerned about heave. You know, maybe this is one of those cases where you can get the insurers to fight it out. I don't know.
Do you know who your neighbour's insurer is? Who are they?
360 Global.
No, that's the loss adjusters. 360 Global is the loss adjusters.
Right.
I don't know who their insurers is.
The loss adjusters they're these kind of bullying people that work for insurers. They're like the kind of dogs. They get sent out to do the kind of intimidation tactics. They often work for two insurers at the same time. They're absolutely appalling people. I think they have no moral compass at all, these people. Yeah, I feel like there's more we could advise you here, because obviously we really focus in London on insurance claims. They're the main threat for our street trees. And Paul P, do you have any advice here for Al at all, or?
It's difficult, isn't it? Obviously, without seeing all the different reports and things, I don't know. I do think you should probably speak to your insurer for one way or another, and actually they might have an interest in getting you genuine, good, expert advice on this. Because, as we're saying, just chopping the trees down might actually make things worse for you, and that therefore makes it worse for them. And in general, I would be very worried about you not informing them, because you might then be liable for all these costs and everything else yourself, which is risky. And I guess just got to hope that they somewhat see sense. But I think it seems to be very risky to just do this alone.
Yeah, sounds good. Have I left it too late? Just as a stupid question, have I left it too late to contact my insurance, given that I've had these letters for the last sort of couple of years? I have obviously complied with one, but I've been arguing with them about the root sample not being right. I've not had any proof that it is.
I mean, I can't say whether it's too late, but obviously in 6 months' time is even later. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to bring in Linda Cantrill, who's just come back on the call. Hi, Linda. I don't know whether you have any advice or anything you'd say to Al about his tree regarding your story as well. I don't know.
It's going to cost money. Basically, it's going to cost you money to get the backing of an arborist and a structural engineer, and that is your best line of defense. Whoever else you can grab hold of them, but it's going to cost a bit of money, and because otherwise you are continually lied to. You need evidence to challenge. You need professional evidence to challenge, because it turns out you can be the professional, but it doesn't matter. You need other professionals, outside professionals, to just write something on paper. It's going to cost you between, I don't know where you are, £500 or £600. Probably not going to cost that. We live in cheap Devon, but
and if I did go down that route, who would I contact?
Structural engineer.
So you gather your evidence and you hit your neighbours with it direct. Let them take it to their insurers, or if you've got their insurers' details, then you slide it by them. But the thing about insurers is they love to threaten.
Yeah.
It is on your property, so they cannot enter your property to fell your tree, no matter what. They can't even come after you when they haven't even applied to the council to get it felled, because that would die on its arse as well. So because it's your property is protected.
But I guess what they're saying is that he will be held liable for the underpinning should it have to be done because the tree wasn't felled. Does that make sense?
But it's still his property. You are entitled by law to, and it's got to be proven. It's really got to be proven. And in my case, insurance companies lie when they have the boreholes done on their property, the insurance companies lie, the labs lie, the labs do lie. Whoever's inputting that lab data will lie. And that's what we have been constantly arguing about, the lying that goes on. So to be able to take you to court for the money, then that's so far down the line anyway. But it's your property. To hold you liable, there would have to be a massive, long, lengthy, very well advertised by you sort of, you just need the media on your side, you need all of your locals on your side, you need tree huggers on your side. Get in touch with your local tree wardens and basic tree huggers. They will, and tree officers, get in touch with your local council tree officers. They will back you 100% and support your tree. You need support. You can't do this on your own. We had to basically employ half of Devon, a small army. And if Holland is still on the call, then I will be hopefully in that meeting alongside just for.
Yeah, I think that Linda's right. I mean, the thing is, they rely on most people just capitulating immediately. It's very unlikely that this is going to become a big court case, because what's the point? They're not going to really make much money out of it. They know you're just an ordinary sort of. They're relying on your intimidation. And if you can just resist and then get more evidence and get more support, you know, I think that, I mean, I'm not even sure of the legality of some of the letters they send out, some of the things they're actually legally able to do to homeowners where the tree's on another. I mean, I'm not quite clear. Well, I think we need to be clearer on that. What are the insurance companies actually allowed? Because they're relying on these letters, you know, to people, and people getting really fearful.
Yeah, I mean, my immediate thought was it's a hooky solicitor, you know, it's almost like, you know, fishing, like you say.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
That's the thing. It's the cheapest option to fell your tree. That's just that's why they're coming after you. And letters to them is absolutely nothing. So if you don't, the thing is, it's almost ridiculous. Yes, if you're going to win a gunfight, you know, don't bring a knife. But they're on such weak ground here. This is your property. Is it a property on the boundary? Is it on the boundary? No. So, and like Gaynor's just said, is there any damage to your home? Is there any damage to your house?
Well, I mean, I'm on clay, so I have cracks in my house all over the place. Sure.
The thing is,
fundamentally,
it is your property. Since when was anybody able to and legally able to come onto your property to fell a tree? The monetary side of it, that hasn't even happened yet. So it's not going to, it's going to die on its arse. You can ignore them, but it's about the amount of stress that this is causing you. So if you want to fight them, then
I'm so sorry to stop, because I'm going to connect you, but if that's all right, I'll connect you both on email. In the meantime, Al, do keep writing to us and we can sort of advise. We'll try and advise, and if there's any other professionals who might be able to give you advice. Yeah, and Jeff Duckett as well. I'll put you in touch with Jeff. So I've sent you my email address for Haringey Tree Protectors. I'm really sorry, we're going to have to finish now. Next month we've got we're on it will be, I think it's Tuesday the 3rd of November. I can't remember exactly. Ali, who have we got coming to speak next month?
It's Deanne from TDAG. I can't remember what she's going to talk about. I should have checked, but I'm sure it'll be very interesting.
Yeah, and TDAG is a tree action design group, and they're a very interesting group that really pushing to try to get developers and architects to integrate trees and natural, kind of like to preserve and integrate trees into design going forward. It's quite interesting. In December's meeting, we've got Paul Wood, the wonderful tree writer, coming to speak to us about fantastic trees all over the UK and some of his favourites. We will share I thought maybe it might be good in some of the meetings to have a part where the meeting stops being recorded for anyone who wants to raise and rant about. I don't mean to use that verb to rant, but if you know, if you want to say anything off the record, it may be. I mean, where are the recordings of the meetings put? Are they put on the website, Ali? I can't remember.
We've got a YouTube channel. We'll just put them up there.
But do people have to have the link to be able to view it, or are they publicly viewable?
Public.
Okay, it might be good to just make that.
We could do them at the beginning. We could do like the slightly more controversial bits at the beginning if people are
At the beginning, yeah. I mean, I don't think anything's particularly, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure, I don't know if anyone for the Woodland Trust going to particularly watch the whole hour, but you never know. 2 hours. But yeah, let's think about that actually. Yes. And thanks everyone for coming. Ben, you didn't get to, is Ben still here? He didn't get to do his update, did he?
It's fine. I'm from the same group. And basically what I told you earlier about the cab app was what we were wanting to convey to you guys.
Okay, and that's Kit. Obviously, you're from the same group, aren't you?
Yeah,
Kit?
yeah.
Okay, thanks so much, everyone, and thanks. And if you want to be connected to anyone in the group, just dub people out. Okay, dub people out. Yeah, if you feel you want to be dubbed out, we'll try and work out how to do that. I don't actually know how to do that, but I'll try and work it out. Okay, thanks so much, everyone. Good luck with your campaigns, and see you next
Thanks,
time.
everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.